Jake Sullivan stared out the window of the starship Defiant as they approached Nexus Prime. The planet looked like a giant jewel floating in space, covered in bright lights and tall buildings that reached up into the clouds. He had dreamed of this moment for years, but something felt wrong. The other ships around them were keeping their distance like they were afraid to get too close. "Commander, we're getting another message from the station," said Amy Carter from her seat at the communications panel. Her voice was tight with worry. "They want us to dock at Bay 97. Jake frowned. Bay 97 was in the cargo section, not where diplomatic ships usually went. "Any word on when we meet with the council?" Amy shook her head. "They just keep saying we'll get instructions soon." Dr. Ben Rodriguez looked up from his medical scanner. "Sir, I'm picking up a lot of strange readings from the planet. There are dozens of different species down there, but their biology is unusual. Very specialized." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Well, take the Korthak. They're built like tanks, but their bones are hollow. Strong but brittle. And the Viridians have huge brains, but their muscle tissue is almost non-existent." Ben scratched his head. "It's like they've all evolved for one specific thing." Lisa Thompson looked up from her engineering station. "Same thing with their ships, Commander. Beautiful designs, but they're all specialists. The Korthak ships are all weapons and armor, but slow as molasses. The Viridian ships are fast but have no defenses. Nobody builds general-purpose vessels anymore." Jake nodded, filing away the information. Everything about this place felt strange. The aliens had been watching Earth for decades, sending messages about joining their great confederation of planets. But now that humans were finally here, it felt like they were being treated like unwanted guests. The docking went smoothly, but as soon as they stepped off their ship, Jake knew something was very wrong. The docking bay was full of aliens, but they weren't there for a ceremony. They were pointing at the humans and making sounds that could only be laughter. A tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms approached them. "Welcome, welcome. I am Coordinator Zex4471 of the Viridian Collective. We are so excited to see the famous humans in person." "Thank you," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're honored to be here and look forward to beginning diplomatic relations." Zex4471 made a sound like wind chimes. "Oh, diplomatic relations, how adorable. Yes, we have wonderful plans for you. Come, let us show you to your quarters." They were led through corridors filled with aliens who stopped what they were doing to stare and point. Jake heard the universal translator picking up fragments of conversation. "Look how small they are. Do you think they'll do the violence dance? I heard they eat their own dead. Primitive little things." Amy moved closer to Jake. "Sir, I don't think they see us as equals." "I'm starting to figure that out," Jake muttered. Their quarters were comfortable but clearly designed for observation. The walls were transparent from the outside, and Jake could see aliens gathering to watch them like they were animals in a zoo. Lisa immediately started checking for surveillance equipment and found dozens of cameras and listening devices. "They're not even trying to hide it," she whispered. "We're being broadcast live." The next morning, Zex4471 returned with an excited expression. "Today is the big day. You get to perform at the Primitive Species Showcase. Billions of beings across the galaxy will watch." "Perform?" Jake asked carefully. "Yes. You will demonstrate your quaint customs and amusing behaviors. The audience loves learning about primitive cultures. You humans are particularly popular because you do such wonderfully violent and irrational things." Jake felt his jaw clench, but he forced himself to smile. "Of course, we'd be happy to share our culture." The showcase was held in a massive amphitheater filled with thousands of alien spectators. Jake and his crew were introduced like circus performers, with dramatic music and flashing lights. The announcer spoke in a dozen languages simultaneously, from the primitive world of Earth, the violent and unpredictable humans. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Jake looked around at the faces in the audience. Some showed curiosity, others amusement, but none showed respect. They were entertainment, nothing more. "Commander Sullivan," the announcer continued, "please demonstrate your species' famous territorial aggression." Jake stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. We appreciate the invitation to share our culture. However, we believe there may be some misunderstanding about our nature. The crowd grew quiet, sensing something unexpected. We didn't come here to perform or entertain. We came here as representatives of our world, hoping to build relationships with other civilizations. If you're not interested in that, we understand. But we won't pretend to be something we're not for your amusement. The silence stretched on. Then, slowly, scattered laughter began to ripple through the crowd. It grew louder and louder until the entire amphitheater was roaring with laughter. "Oh, how precious," the announcer said. "They think they're real diplomats. This is even better than we hoped." Jake stood there, listening to the laughter, feeling his team's anger and humiliation. But he also felt something else: determination. These aliens thought humans were weak and stupid. They had no idea what they were dealing with. That night, back in their transparent quarters, Jake gathered his team. "We're going to play along," he said quietly, knowing they were being recorded. "We're going to be the best primitive performers they've ever seen. And while we're doing it, we're going to learn everything we can about them." Amy nodded. "What are you thinking, sir?" Jake smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "I'm thinking they're about to learn why underestimating humans is a very bad idea." Outside their quarters, aliens continued to gather and point, completely unaware that the entertainment was about to become something much more dangerous. Jake woke up to the sound of alien laughter outside their quarters. 3 weeks had passed since the showcase, and every day brought new requests for the humans to perform. Today was different, though. Today they were supposed to demonstrate human combat techniques for the Korthak Military Academy. "Ready for another show?" Amy asked as she checked her equipment. She had gotten very good at pretending to be a simple soldier while secretly studying everything around her. "Always," Jake replied, with a fake smile. "Remember, we're just dumb humans who like to fight." The Korthak training facility was impressive. Massive warriors in heavy armor practiced with weapons that could cut through steel. Their instructor, General Thokvar, stood nearly 8 feet tall and had arms like tree trunks. He looked at the humans like they were insects. "So these are the famous human warriors," Thokvar said in a voice like grinding rocks. "Show us how your primitive species fights." Amy stepped forward carrying simple human weapons. No energy beams or plasma rifles, just basic guns and knives. The Korthak warriors laughed when they saw them. "Those toys are your weapons?" one warrior asked. "They work fine for us," Amy said cheerfully. She set up targets across the training ground. "Would you like to see how we use them?" What happened next made the laughter stop. Amy moved like liquid lightning, hitting targets with perfect accuracy while running, jumping, and rolling. Her movements were unpredictable and chaotic, nothing like the formal combat styles the Korthak used. She hit targets behind her without looking, bounced shots off walls to hit hidden targets, and moved in ways that made the heavy Korthak armor seem clumsy and slow. "Interesting," Thokvar said quietly. "Your techniques are very creative." Amy smiled and handed him one of her weapons. "Would you like to try?" The general took the gun, aimed carefully at a target, and missed completely. His massive hands were built for gripping huge weapons, not the small, precise tools humans used. He tried again and again, growing more frustrated each time. "This weapon is defective," he growled. "Maybe," Amy said, taking it back and immediately hitting the same target 3 times in a row. "Or maybe it's designed for different hands." While Amy was teaching the Korthak about human fighting, Dr. Ben Rodriguez was giving medical demonstrations to the Viridian Collective. The blue-skinned aliens were fascinated by his primitive healing techniques. "You actually cut into bodies with metal tools?" Dr. Vel 9923 asked in amazement. "How barbaric! How do you prevent infection?" Ben showed them his surgical instruments, explaining how humans cleaned and sterilized them. The Viridians were shocked. Their medical technology used energy fields and nanomachines. They had forgotten that bodies could be healed with simple tools and knowledge. "What happens when your advanced equipment breaks?" Ben asked innocently. "It doesn't break," Dr. Vel 9923 said proudly. "Our technology is perfect." "But what if it did?" The Viridian doctor looked confused. I don't know. We would call technicians to fix it. And if the technicians weren't available?" That's impossible. The system is foolproof. Ben nodded and smiled, but inside he was taking notes. The Viridians had built a medical system with no backup plans. If something went wrong with their technology, they would be helpless. Humans, with their primitive tools and basic knowledge, could keep working no matter what happened. Meanwhile, Lisa Thompson was in the engineering section, showing alien technicians how human ships worked. The aliens were amazed by how simple and crude everything looked. "Your engines are so basic," said Chief Engineer Cox Rinn of the Zephyrian Commonwealth. "How do they even function?" Lisa opened up an engine panel, showing them the mechanical parts inside. "Everything is designed to be fixed with basic tools. If something breaks, any crew member can repair it." "But that's so inefficient," Cox Rinn said. "Our engines are completely automated. They repair themselves and optimize their own performance." "That sounds wonderful," Lisa said. "What happens if the automation system fails?" "It can't fail. It's built with triple redundancy and quantum error correction." "But what if it did fail?" Cox Rinn looked uncomfortable. "Well, we would call for a repair ship." "And if the repair ship couldn't reach you?" That wouldn't happen." Lisa smiled and continued her demonstration, showing how humans could rebuild an entire engine with nothing but scrap metal and basic tools. The aliens watched in fascination, not understanding that they were seeing something their own civilizations had lost centuries ago. Each night, the human team met in their quarters to share what they had learned. Jake was amazed by what his crew had discovered. "They're all specialists," Amy reported. "The Korthak are strong but slow. Their armor makes them nearly impossible to hurt, but they can't adapt to new situations. Show them something unexpected and they freeze up. The Viridians are brilliant, but fragile," Ben added. "Their bodies are weak and they depend completely on their technology. Take away their machines and they're helpless." "And the Zephyrians are fast but stupid," Lisa said. "Their ships can outrun anything, but they follow predictable patterns. They've automated everything so much that they've forgotten how to think for themselves." Jake nodded, processing the information. "What about their military coordination?" "Terrible," Amy said. "Each species fights the way they always have. The Korthak charge straight ahead, the Viridians try to outthink their enemies, and the Zephyrians just run around really fast. They don't work together at all. And none of them have fought a real war in over 300 years, Ben added. "They're all theory and no practice." Jake looked out at the aliens still watching them through the transparent walls. "They think we're primitive because we still use simple tools and fight with basic weapons. They don't understand that simple. Tools work when complex ones fail." "What's the plan, sir?" Lisa asked. Jake smiled, but it wasn't the fake smile he wore during the day. This one was real, and it was dangerous. "We keep being good little primitives," he said. "And we keep learning. Because when the time comes, we're going to show them exactly why humans survived long enough to reach the stars." Outside their quarters, the aliens continued to watch and laugh, completely unaware that their entertainment was studying them with the cold precision of predators planning their next hunt. 6 months after Jake Sullivan first arrived at Nexus Prime, the sky above the planet filled with human ships. 12 vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the system's twin suns. The aliens watching from the space station stopped laughing. Fleet Admiral Dan Mitchell stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Intrepid, watching the alien ships scramble to respond to their arrival. Captain Lisa Brooks moved smoothly between control stations, coordinating with the other human vessels. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple hails from Nexus Prime Control," reported the communications officer. "They seem confused." Dan smiled. "I bet they are. Put me through to Jake Sullivan first." On the planet below, Jake received the message in his transparent quarters, surrounded as always by curious aliens. His face remained calm, but Amy Carter saw the relief in his eyes. "Commander Sullivan," Dan's voice came through clearly. "We're here to establish a permanent embassy. I trust you've prepared the way?" "Yes, sir," Jake replied, knowing every alien in the galaxy was probably listening. The locals have been very educational. Within an hour, The alien leadership was in emergency session. Coordinator Zex4471 paced nervously in the council chamber while General Thakvar and Chief Engineer Kyax Rin argued about what to do. They said they were sending one ship for cultural exchange, Zex4471 said, his forearms waving frantically. Now there are 12 military vessels in our space. Military vessels? Thakvar growled. Those primitive ships? They look like metal. Boxes with engines stuck on them. Ugly ships. Kyax Rin agreed. But there are so many of them. The human fleet requested permission to dock and establish formal diplomatic relations. The aliens, not wanting to appear afraid of primitive humans, agreed. But they assigned the human ships to the oldest, least secure docking stations, hoping to show their superiority. That was their first mistake. Commander Rick Hayes led the diplomatic security detail off the Intrepid. The aliens expected to see a small honor guard with ceremonial weapons. Instead, they watched 30 humans in combat gear move like they owned the station. Every step was calculated, every glance measured potential threats. These weren't performers, putting on a show. These were soldiers. Welcome to Nexus Prime, Zex4471 said nervously. We are honored by your extensive delegation. Admiral Mitchell stepped forward, his uniform crisp and his expression serious. Thank you for the welcome. We look forward to productive discussions about our mutual future. The aliens noticed immediately that the Admiral's tone was different from Jake's friendly performance act. This human spoke like an equal, not an entertainer begging for attention. The real shock came during the first formal meeting. The human delegation didn't sit in the special primitive species section. They took seats at the main council table, and when Coordinator Zex4471 tried to object, Admiral Mitchell simply stared at him until the alien sat down and stayed quiet. We appreciate the cultural exchange program you provided for Commander Sullivan and his team, Mitchell said calmly. It was very informative. Now we'd like to discuss more substantial matters. General Thakvar leaned forward, trying to intimidate the human with his massive size. What could primitives like you possibly offer advanced civilizations like ours? Protection, Mitchell replied without hesitation. The room went quiet. Then, slowly, alien laughter began to build. The idea of humans protecting advanced alien civilizations was hilarious. The laughter stopped abruptly when alerts began sounding throughout the station. Admiral, Captain Brooks's voice came through Mitchell's communicator. We have a situation. Zephyrian pirates are attacking a human cargo ship in Sector 7. Understood, Mitchell replied. Captain Foster, you have command. Show them what we learned. In space above Nexus Prime, Captain Sarah Foster received the order aboard her escort frigate, the Guardian. The ship was small compared to the massive alien vessels, but what happened next changed everything the aliens thought they knew about human capabilities. The pirate fleet consisted of 8 fast Zephyrian raiders, sleek ships designed for hit-and-run attacks. They had surrounded the human cargo vessel, demanding surrender. Standard alien procedure would be to call for help and wait for negotiations. The pirates expected an easy victory against primitive humans. The Guardian arrived like a guided missile. Sarah's ship moved in ways that shouldn't have been possible, changing direction without slowing down, spinning and twisting through space like it was dancing. The alien pirates fired their energy weapons, but the human ship wasn't where their targeting computers said it should be. Target the lead ship, Sarah ordered calmly. All weapons. The Guardian's weapons were simple compared to alien technology. Solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Chemical explosives instead of plasma charges. The pirates' shields were designed to stop advanced energy weapons. They weren't designed to stop a hail of metal slugs moving at incredible speed. The lead pirate ship's shields collapsed in seconds. The hull cracked like an eggshell. The ship tumbled away, trailing atmosphere and debris. Impossible, whispered one of the remaining pirates over the radio. Sarah heard the transmission and responded directly. Surrender now and you live. Keep fighting and join your friend. The pirates tried to run. That was their second mistake. The human ship chased them down one by one, not with superior speed, but with better tactics. Sarah predicted where they would go and was waiting for them. She used the local asteroids as cover, bounced weapons fire off metal debris to hit targets around corners, and showed a level of three-dimensional thinking that the specialized alien pirates couldn't match. Within 20 minutes, 7 pirate ships were destroyed or disabled. The 8th had surrendered. Back on Nexus Prime, the alien leadership watched the entire battle on their screens. The laughter had stopped. The casual dismissal of human capabilities was over. These weren't primitive entertainers. These were warriors with technology that looked simple but worked in ways the aliens didn't understand. How did they do that? Cox Rin asked quietly. Admiral Mitchell stood up from the council table. We've been watching you as much as you've been watching us. The difference is we learned something useful. General Thokvar's massive hands clenched into fists. You think one small victory makes you our equals? No, Mitchell replied calmly. I think 12 ships, trained crews, and a willingness to actually fight makes us your equals. The victory just proves it. The alien council looked at each other nervously. For the first time in centuries, they were facing something they didn't understand. Something that couldn't be dismissed as primitive entertainment. Jake Sullivan watched from his quarters as the political situation shifted around them. The aliens were no longer pointing and laughing. They were calculating and planning, trying to figure out what to do about the humans who had stopped being funny and started being dangerous. Amy Carter stood beside him, watching alien military ships positioning themselves around the human fleet. Think they'll try something stupid, sir? Jake smiled, but this time it was the same dangerous smile Admiral Mitchell wore. I hope they do. It would save us a lot of trouble. Outside their quarters, the aliens still watched, but now they watched with fear instead of amusement. The joke was over, and they were beginning to realize they might have been the punchline all along. 3 months after the pirate incident, the Galactic Confederation was falling apart. Member species that had worked together for thousands of years were now arguing and preparing for war. The Korthak Empire was building more weapons. The Viridian Collective was creating new battle computers. The Zephyrian Commonwealth was designing faster ships. Everyone was getting ready to fight, but nobody wanted to admit they were scared of the humans. President Maria Lopez arrived from Earth on the newest human ship, a massive vessel called the Constitution. She brought with her a full diplomatic team and Admiral Tony Clark's expanded fleet of 30 ships. The aliens tried to act like this was normal, but their hands shook when they signed the docking permits. Welcome, President Lopez, Coordinator Zex 4471 said as she stepped off her ship. His forearms were twitching with nervousness. We are pleased to continue our cultural exchange program. Maria looked at him with calm, intelligent eyes. Thank you, Coordinator. But I think we're past the cultural exchange phase. We're here to discuss real business between equals. The word equals made several aliens in the welcoming committee step backward. 6 months ago, they would have laughed at the idea. Now, with human ships filling their space and human weapons proven in battle, the word sounded different. Of course, Zex 4471 said quickly. Equals. Yes, we have prepared extensive negotiations. What the aliens hadn't prepared for was Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murphy and his training program. Steve was a short, quiet man who looked harmless until he started teaching alien soldiers how to fight. The Confederation had requested joint military exercises, hoping to learn human weaknesses. Instead, they learned how much trouble they were in. The first exercise took place on a Korthak training world. 500 Korthak warriors in their best armor faced 50 human soldiers with basic equipment. General Thokvar watched from his command post, confident that his superior warriors would crush the primitive humans. Begin the exercise, he ordered. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries. The humans didn't charge forward like proper warriors. They didn't form neat lines like civilized soldiers. Instead, they disappeared. One moment they were standing in an open field. The next moment they were gone, scattered and hidden in ways the Korthak couldn't track. The first Korthak patrol lost contact within 10 minutes. Then the second, then the third. The human soldiers moved through the landscape like ghosts, appearing just long enough to disable Korthak warriors before vanishing again. Where are they? Thokvar demanded, staring at his tactical display. How can 50 primitives hide from our sensors? Lieutenant Colonel Murphy's voice came through the radio, calm and professional. "We're not hiding, General. We're hunting. The bro." Exercise ended in 4 hours. All 500 Korthak warriors had been eliminated without a single human casualty. The massive aliens, so powerful in direct combat, had been helpless against enemies who refused to fight fair. "Impossible," Thokvar said, staring at the results. "Our armor should have protected them. Our weapons should have found you." Steve Murphy walked up to the command post, not even breathing hard. "Your armor protects against the weapons you expect to face. Your sensors look for the enemies you're used to fighting. We don't fight the way you expect." The Viridian Collective tried next, convinced their superior intelligence would let them outsmart the humans. Dr. Vel 9923 designed elaborate war games, complex scenarios with multiple objectives and changing conditions. The Viridians brought their best strategists, their most advanced computers, their most sophisticated battle plans. Commander Rick Hayes led the human team with 25 soldiers who looked like they barely understood the rules. The Viridians explained their elegant strategy for 2 hours, showing detailed charts and probability calculations. "Do you understand?" Dr. Vel 9923 asked condescendingly. "Sure," Rick said with a friendly smile. "Sounds complicated." The war game began with the Viridians implementing their carefully calculated plan. Every move was precise, every decision based on mathematical models. Their computers predicted human responses and adjusted tactics accordingly. The problem was, the humans didn't follow the computer predictions. Instead of responding logically to Viridian moves, the humans did things that made no sense. They abandoned strong positions for no reason. They attacked when they should have defended. They split their forces when they should have concentrated them. The Viridian computers crashed trying to process the illogical human behavior. Dr. Vel 9923 watched his perfect strategy fall apart as the humans won through pure unpredictability. "This is not how warfare is supposed to work," he complained to Rick after the exercise. "Maybe not," Rick replied. "But it's how humans work. We're not computers. We don't always do the logical thing." The Zephyrian Commonwealth was last, and they were confident their speed would save them. Chief Engineer Kyax Rin had designed a chase scenario where fast Zephyrian ships would outrun slower human vessels. Captain Lisa Brooks took command of 5 human ships against 20 Zephyrian racers. The aliens laughed as they sped away from the starting line, their sleek ships moving faster than anything the humans could build. 10 minutes later, all 20 Zephyrian ships had been captured. "How?" Cochrane demanded. "You couldn't have caught us. Our ships are twice as fast as yours." Lisa smiled. "Speed only matters if you're going in the right direction. We didn't chase you. We figured out where you were going and got there first." The humans had studied Zephyrian flight patterns during their months of observation. They knew exactly how the aliens would move, what routes they would take, what tactics they would use. While the Zephyrians were racing around the course, the humans had simply taken shortcuts and waited for them to arrive. News of the exercises spread throughout the Confederation. 3 of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy had been defeated by humans using methods that seemed impossible. The aliens who had laughed at primitive human tactics were now studying them desperately, trying to understand how they worked. But understanding and copying were different things. The alien species had spent thousands of years becoming specialists. The Korthak had forgotten how to be sneaky. The Viridians had forgotten how to be unpredictable. The Zephyrians had forgotten how to think ahead instead of just moving fast. Humans had never forgotten any of these things. Dr. Rachel Green made the most disturbing discovery of all while studying alien biology and culture. She presented her findings to President Lopez in a private meeting that made the president's face go pale. "They're not just specialists," Rachel explained. "They're evolutionary dead ends. Each species has become so adapted to their specific role that they can't change anymore. The Korthak can only think like warriors. The Viridians can only think like scientists. The Zephyrians can only think like traders. And humans?" President Lopez asked. "We're still generalists. We can adapt to anything because we haven't locked ourselves into a single way of thinking. That's why we're so dangerous to them. were what they used to be before they became perfect at one thing and forgot how to do everything else. As the training exercises continued, Jake Sullivan found himself in an unexpected position. Alien military commanders who had once laughed at him were now asking for his advice. Species that had dismissed humans as primitives were begging to learn human tactics. But the most important change was political. The Confederation Council no longer treated humans as entertainment. When President Lopez spoke, they listened. When Admiral Clark made suggestions, they took notes. When human representatives voted, their votes mattered. The joke was over. The punchline had become the point of the story, and everyone in the galaxy was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, the primitive humans from Earth weren't so primitive. After all, in fact, they might be the most dangerous species anyone had ever encountered. The crisis began with a single message received at Nexus Prime on a quiet Tuesday morning. The Xerion Dominion, a militaristic empire from the galaxy's outer rim, had declared war on the Confederation. Their massive fleets were already attacking. Korthak and Zephyrian border worlds crushing defenses that had stood unchallenged for centuries. Coordinator Zex4471 burst into the emergency council session, his 4 arms shaking with panic. They came from nowhere. 50 worlds attacked simultaneously. Our fleets can't even slow them down. General Thokvar pounded his massive fist on the table. Impossible. The Xerians are barbarians. They have no advanced technology. That's what we said about the humans, Chief Engineer Kyox Rin pointed out quietly. The room fell silent as the implications hit them. The aliens had spent months learning that their assumptions about primitive species could be dangerously wrong. Now another unknown enemy was proving the same lesson in the most violent way possible. President Maria Lopez sat calmly at the council table, watching the alien panic with steady eyes. How many ships are they bringing? Our scouts estimate over 3,000 vessels, Zex4471 replied. Ancient designs, but heavily armed and completely ruthless. And how many ships does the Confederation have? Nearly 8,000, but they're scattered across hundreds of systems. It would take weeks to gather a proper defense fleet. Admiral Tony Clark leaned forward. The Xerians aren't giving you weeks. They're hitting your major shipyards and supply bases first. Classic strategy. Destroy your ability to build more ships, then pick off what's left. Maria nodded. We can help, but it won't be free. If humanity is going to risk our ships and crews for the Confederation, we want something in return. Anything. Zex4471 said desperately. Name your price. Full membership in the Confederation Council, not as entertainment or junior partners, as equals with equal voting rights. The alien council members looked at each other nervously. 6 months ago, the idea would have been laughable. Now, with Xerion fleets destroying everything in their path, human help looked like their only chance of survival. Agreed. General Thokvar growled. But can you actually stop them? Maria smiled, the same dangerous smile that Jake Sullivan had worn during his months of humiliation. General, you're about to learn why humans survived long enough to reach the stars. Within hours, General Mike Thompson was coordinating the Confederation's response from his command ship, the Liberty. He had 60 human vessels and whatever alien ships could reach the combat zone in time. It wasn't nearly enough to match the Xerion numbers, but Mike had never been one to worry about fair fights. Captain Wright, take the first battle group and link up with the Korthak survivors at Helios Station, he ordered. Captain Davis, I want you and the second group to hit their supply lines behind enemy territory. Captain Kelly Wright acknowledged the order and led her mixed force of human and alien ships toward the most important battle of the war. Helios Station controlled the main trade routes between Confederation worlds. If it fell, the Xerians could split the Confederation in half. The station was already under attack when Kelly arrived. Massive Xerion battleships pounded the defenses, while waves of fighters swarmed around the station's gun platforms. The few surviving Korthak ships were fighting desperately, but their heavy armor was slowly being worn down by constant enemy fire. All ships, this is Captain Wright, Kelly, announced over the radio. We're going to show these Xerions what happens when they pick on our friends. The human attack was unlike anything the Xerions had ever faced. Instead of forming battle lines like civilized warriors, The human ships scattered in all directions, moving independently and unpredictably. They didn't try to match the Xerian ships in firepower. Instead, they used speed, tactics, and coordination to turn the enemy's own strengths against them. Commander Paul Davis led the defense of Helios Station itself, turning the massive structure into a fortress that could strike back at its attackers. Human engineers worked with Korthak warriors to modify the station's weapons, creating new gun positions and missile launchers from salvaged ship parts. "Sir, the Xerians are concentrating their attack on the main reactor," reported his second-in-command. "If they destroy it, the whole station goes dark." Paul smiled grimly. "Then let's give them what they want." Instead of protecting the reactor, Paul evacuated that section of the station and rigged it with explosives. When the Xerion assault teams finally broke through the defenses and reached their target, they found themselves in a carefully prepared trap. The explosion took out 3 Xerian ships and damaged a dozen more. But more importantly, it showed the enemy that humans didn't fight the way they expected. The Xerians had spent the war overwhelming enemy positions with superior numbers. They had never faced defenders who were willing to sacrifice their own assets to achieve victory. The turning point came when Captain Sarah Foster arrived with reinforcements. Her ship, the Guardian, had been modified with new weapons designed specifically to counter Xerion tactics. Instead of trying to penetrate their heavy armor, human weapons targeted their engines and weapon systems, leaving Xerion ships intact, but helpless. "Xerion command vessel, this is Captain Foster," Sarah announced over an open channel. "You have 10 seconds to surrender before we disable your ship." The Xerion commander's response was a stream of insults and threats. Sarah counted to 10, then gave the order to fire. The Xerion flagship didn't explode in a dramatic fireball. Instead, it simply stopped working. Its engines went dead, its weapons powered down, and its communication systems fell silent. The massive ship drifted helplessly in space, completely unharmed but totally defeated. The sight of their invincible flagship being neutralized without being destroyed broke the Xerion attack. Ships that had been pressing forward moments earlier began to retreat, then flee in complete panic. The war ended not with a massive battle, but with a series of small, precise strikes that showed the Xerians they were facing something they couldn't understand or defeat. Within a week, Xerion diplomats were requesting peace negotiations. 2 months later, Ambassador Frank Baker stood before the new Galactic Assembly on Earth. The old Confederation was gone, replaced by a more equal partnership where every member species had a voice. The ceremony was held in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York, with alien delegates learning about human history and culture. "When we first came to your worlds," Frank said, addressing the alien representatives, "you saw us as primitive entertainment, something to laugh at and dismiss. You made the same mistake the Xerians made. You thought advanced technology made you superior." He gestured to the human and alien delegates sitting together in the assembly hall. "But superiority isn't about having the best weapons or the fastest ships or the smartest computers. It's about being able to adapt when things don't go according to plan. It's about working together when you're outnumbered. It's about never giving up even when the situation looks hopeless." Young alien students in the gallery listened carefully as their teacher explained how the humans had changed everything. One small Viridian child raised her hand. "Teacher, how did the humans become so strong?" The teacher, an old Korthak warrior who had fought alongside human soldiers, considered the question carefully. "They never forgot they were mortal," he said finally. "Every other species in the galaxy became so advanced that they forgot they could fail. Humans never forgot. That made them remember how to survive. And that, little one, is the most dangerous thing in the universe." Outside the assembly building, Jake Sullivan walked with Amy Carter through the streets of New York. Above them, human and alien ships moved through Earth's sky, carrying diplomats and traders and tourists who wanted to see the world that had changed the galaxy. "Think it will last?" Amy asked, watching a group of young Zephyrians taking pictures of human architecture. Jake smiled, but this time it was neither fake nor dangerous. It was simply satisfied. "As long as we remember who we are," he said. "As long as we stay human." The galaxy had learned to stop laughing at Earth. More importantly, Earth had learned that sometimes the best way to win is to let everyone underestimate you until it's too late for them to realize their mistake. The punchline had become the point, and the joke was finally on everyone else.